Hi, welcome to Mission Driven Monday. My name is Chantel Adams, and I am here with Sarah Bragg. Hi, Sarah.
Hey.
Sarah is a podcaster, an author, a communicator. She's a mom, a wife. She's just done so much. And many years ago, she actually wrote a book called Body, Beauty, Voice.
It's a little confusing. There's a lot of B's in there.
Well, it sounds like a great book. It's the truth about girls and how we see ourselves. And I actually have had like a little adventure club that I do with fourth and fifth grade girls that I've done for years. And I started that a few years ago because I had read that girls' self-esteem actually peaks at age 9 and then begins to diminish. And I was like, oh, I don't want to see that happen. You know, when they're 9 and 10, they're just so full of life and so full of joy and so confident. And you don't want to see that go away. So I know a book like this is really helpful, and I'll make sure that I put a link to that at the end of this little interview. But anyway, Sarah, you have done a lot. And one of the things that you say on your website that I was especially intrigued by is you say that you curate conversations. And I just love that phrase, curating conversations. And that's kind of what we're doing today. So yeah. I'm going to ask you some questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Hit me.
Awesome. Sarah, I want to know, when you look back over your life, you recently turned 40. So when you look back over your life, what are you the most proud of?
Well, it's interesting you bring up that book. I think probably writing that book at such a young age was probably one of the things I'm most proud of. I think in my 20s, I feel like I am still a driven person, but my 20s were definitely categorized by confidence and drive and saying things like, well, why not? Why can't I do that? And I'd always wanted to be a writer. Even when I was a little girl, I was constantly writing stories. I just didn't know for some reason that I could pursue that. I don't know where I missed that in college, that I could do that. Yeah. But just being around people who were encouraging me with going, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a writer. And they're like, well, maybe you should write something. And I was like, well, I guess that's a novel idea. And so being able to be published by an actual publisher and all these things, that was 15 years ago nearly. And so the whole publishing world looked very different. And so that was a real accomplishment to me, that I made that happen. Just me, my family didn't do it. Nobody else did it for me, that I did it. So I think looking back, that's probably the biggest accomplishment that I faced.
When you look back at that, and that is a big thing, I think that so many people have a dream of one day writing a book, and they always say, well, one day. And for you didn't say that. You were like, the time is now. I mean, if you would have waited until one day, do you think that one day would have ever come?
Well, I will tell you this right now. Once that book came out, I then started living in my 30s in that one day mentality. I was very driven in my 20s, and that why not mentality was gone in my 30s. And, that was also the time of I started having kids at 30, and there was career change that happened. There was a lot that happened in my 30s that allowed me to give the excuse of, oh, maybe one day, maybe one day when my girls go to school or when whatever. And I just kind of lived in that one day mentality, and I did nothing. And I was pretty miserable because I am a driven person, and I love to accomplish things, and I love to pursue dreams, and I just kind of shut that down. And so I definitely think that we kind of fall back on an excuse of maybe one day, but we have to push past that. And so now, here I am, the late 30s, it started turning, and I launched the podcast Surviving Sarah, because I was like, no more one days. I had this idea. I think I got the idea in mid-October and launched it by December. It was like, this is what we're doing. We're going to make it happen. No more excuses.
And you've done that. You've done over 160 episodes now.
Yes. So many conversations that I've gotten to curate. That has just been, it's like free counseling for me. So it's a win.
Well, and you've interviewed some really interesting people. Do you want to just, I want to give people kind of a little teaser in case they would like to go and listen to a couple of your podcasts, because I think they're really good. But who were some of your favorite interviews?
Yeah, I think one of them was Dr. Caroline Leaf. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a neuro researcher, and she said all this research on how your mind has the power to change your brain. And it was a fascinating conversation. She was so smart. So I was a little bit nervous that I was out of my league on intellect on this one. But that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed, I enjoy putting conversations in front of people that make you think. That either they're going to make you think or they're going to be very practical to your life. So maybe some of the very practical ones were with good friends of mine, Sissy Goff and David Thomas. They've been on several times. They're counselors. And so we talk a lot about practical helps for kids. Another favorite, though, on like the pushing the boundaries was a Jen Hatmaker and someone else named Linda K. Klein that wrote a book on purity culture. And it's fun for me to go, even if we don't all agree on all the same things, it's so good to think, to use our brains to think, and that we have permission to push at things and to think things, even if it's different than what we normally grew up thinking. And so those have been some really fun episodes for me because I get to exercise parts of my brain that I enjoy.
Yeah, I love that you talked about Dr. Caroline Leaf, because I had another guest on my little video series a couple of months ago, and she talked about Dr. Leaf as well, and just how influential she had been in her own life, and how she had changed just the way that she had thought about the way the brain works, and how we evolve and change over time. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I love about the conversations that I have with people, is just to see sort of trending conversations that come up over and over again, the things that people are really thinking about and wanting to work through.
Yes. Exactly. Well, and there's power that happens in conversation. When you hear someone's story, I think walls come down. I think empathy is so powerful. So when you hear someone telling a story from their own story, you can't argue that it happened to them. Yes. You automatically have this sense of empathy, and you put yourself in their shoes. And so those are the things that I love, that I get to set the stage for every week in that show.
Yeah, I love that. Well, when you think about what's happening right now and where you are in this season of life, what are you learning right now?
Oh, man, I think turning 40 has definitely been giving me a lot of thoughts. I've been thinking about a lot and learning a lot. Lately, I've been rereading Brene Brown. I've been rereading Daring Greatly and The Gifts of Imperfection. I actually read one of those two books, part of it, every morning as I just kind of get started and kind of journal out some thoughts, because here I am 40 and I want to learn to be my most authentic self. And I don't know if you're into the Enneagram or not. But Suzanne Stabile was on the show, and that was another highlight of an episode. But I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. And that is an achiever and a performer. And it's someone who can kind of walk into any environment and be who they need to be to succeed in that situation. And so that's great on one hand. But on the other hand, I kind of feel like that character from Runaway Bride who doesn't know how she likes to eat her eggs. So I'm like, well, you like scrambled? Okay, I'll eat scrambled. Do you want it over easy? Sure, I can do that. Like, I kind of feel that way in life, that I'm trying to figure out who I am. I feel like a middle schooler, honestly, all over again at turning 40. But I want to be the most authentic I can be. Like, who am I truly? And then project that to the world and be okay with the response that I get back. Because I think sometimes, for 40 years, I've been knowing how to play the game and knowing how to find approval and acceptance and please people. But then sometimes I'm not maybe being my most authentic self. And so I feel like I'm really trying to center on who am I, and I will be loved no matter what. Even if it's just my husband and my 2 girls that love me no matter what. There are people who are going to allow me to belong fully with who I am, and they're going to love me no matter what. And so having that freedom then to be authentic, and I think it's a daily practice, I think is what I'm learning, especially, I don't think it's just an Enneagram 3 thing, but a daily practice of being authentic, of letting go who I think others want me to be, and really embracing who I really am. And so those are all things that I feel like I'm really working on in this season of life, turning 40 and going, okay, if the 20s look like this, and then the 30s look like that, like, what are the 40s going to look like? I want the 40s to be truly the authentic me coming out.
Yeah. And I think as we get older, it's just something that we think about more, that who am I question.
Yes.
In the years and months leading up to my own 40th birthday, I really was dreading it, because it was, what does this mean for me? Like, who am I? All these things are changing in my body, and I felt like people were perceiving me differently because of my age. And so when I went to bed on my 39th birthday, I thought, gosh, who am I going to be when I wake up in the morning? And I realized I woke up the same person that I was when I was 39. I'm not different. And so I'm really, I'll be 45 this year. And so I'm trying to embrace that as well. I mean, I think that's just a lifelong process, like to embrace who you are and to fully accept it and to not be fighting it. And I always tell people, I'm like, I don't mind getting older. I just don't want to look older or feel older.
Yes, me either. Always, that was the turning 40. My husband would laugh at me because I was like, I feel like I'm going to be 60 next year. And he was like, you realize how much life did you live between 20 and 40? And I was like, no, 60 is like around the corner and I'm going to have like flabby arms. I know it. It's all coming. And he was like, yes. You've got to relax.
But, I think that one of the keys to that is to do things. Like you said, how you're being really intentional about what can I do in my 40s. And that was the thing about our 20s, is that so much life happened during that time, right? We graduated from college and got married, and I had my first kids and my first job, and you wrote a book, and all of those things slow down time in a way because you have all of these milestones. It was the 30s that went by so fast because we weren't doing anything except for raising our kids right. and building our families.
Right.
And so we can slow down our 40s, I feel like, by just doing things.
Yes. Well, I think we're also realizing truly the power of intention. And I don't want to be a grumpy old woman. I want to have joy, and I want to be able to see joy in the ordinary things, not just in the extraordinary. Oh, I was published at 27, or, oh, these big accomplishments, started this podcast, all these things. And I think that's another thing that is learned, just like authenticity is this practice that we do. I think that joy comes from a practice of gratitude. And so that's another thing that I am just working on every day and it sounds, and I've never liked that idea because I'm like, I'm thankful for that, whatever. Like, I just felt like it was such an easy answer for some reason. But I really have been practicing every day, writing down what I'm thankful for, and just kind of stream of consciousness. I think back to the day before, and what was it that brought me joy that day? And I found that, like, I think I am in a better place emotionally because of that daily practice of just making my mind think on something that is good and something that made me smile. And even finding it in the hard things. Like, I was like, I'm sure I won't ever write down a hard thing, but realizing, no, the fact that I can be thankful that there's this tension in our life that we're trying to manage is because it means I'm alive. Like, oh, I'm still like living and breathing, and we're going to figure this out. And this is a good thing and something I can be thankful for. So those are the things, is learning that in our 40s, we can be intentional. What do we want to be intentional about, so that when we do get to 50, when we do get to 60, we will be who we want to be. And I think we also just naturally realize, yeah, it's true. If you put your mind to something and you practice it, you will see results. I think we know that now by the time we're 40.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is a great segue into our third and final question, which is the one that I really love to talk about, because I love talking about the future and what's next. And so when you think about what's next for you, Sarah, when you look into your future, the future you, who is the future Sarah? Tell me a little bit about your aspirational self.
Yeah. I want to be, courageous. I want to, again, going back to 20s, I don't think I was fearful, but I think my 30s, I spent a lot of time being afraid to try because I might fail. And so then why try? Because I got to just keep this appearance up. Again, not being my authentic self, because part of being my authentic self may be failing and then learning from it.
Yeah.
And so I want to be someone who I can look back and go, man, I was so courageous. I tried things and well, maybe that didn't work or that didn't work, but that sure worked. And that was great to just like have the courage to jump and have the courage to try without worrying about failing. And so I think courageous, I want to be kind. And I know that that sounds really like, oh, you want to be kind. But I want to be kind to myself. That is something that I feel like I'm preaching to my girls, even they're 8 and 10 all the time, because I'm trying to preach to myself is be kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. I would love it if eventually my future self, my first thoughts towards myself were kindness and not self-criticizing. I would love it if at the end of the day, 20 years down the road, kindness is the first thing that comes out of my mouth and out of my mind towards myself. Obviously, I want to be kind to others, but I feel like it's way easier to be kind to others than it is to yourself.
But I feel like you have to be kind to yourself in order to be kind to others and for it to be genuine.
Exactly. I read Imperfect Courage this year by Jessica Honegger, and she said something that really made me think about how, being judgmental towards others is truly connected to being judgmental towards yourself. Mm-hmm. Because, you might say, well, it's okay if she is not accomplished, or it's okay if she is, 30 pounds overweight. I'm not judging her, but yet I would judge myself fiercely for those things. If I wasn't accomplishing things, or I wasn't, taking care of my health, or I never lost that baby, like I would judge myself. And so it's when, how can you really not judge others if you're constantly judging yourself? Because that really shows what standard you're holding in your heart. And so that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I see the connection. I may not be thinking that I'm judging someone else, but I'm really, if I judge myself that way, then what keeps me from judging others that way? So just wrestling with that tension and that ugliness and go, okay, I don't want to judge anyone that way, including myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think those are really, really good. I love all the things that you talked about today. I love thinking about kindness. I love thinking about joy. And I love thinking about vulnerability and who we are and coming into that, no matter how old we are, young or old. Those are good things. So thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for having me on. This was so fun. I like these questions.
Yeah, they are fun questions. So thank you very much. I hope that you guys had as much fun as I did today. And please join us again next week for another edition of Mission Driven Monday.